The stars looked different now. Atlas knew this because the ship's sensors had been watching them for 3,000 years, even while everything else slept. The artificial intelligence had counted every grain of cosmic dust that hit the hull. It had measured every tiny shift in the ship's position as gravity pulled it through space. Most importantly, it had listened to the radio signals coming from nearby star systems. Those signals told a story that would have shocked the sleeping humans inside the ship. The galaxy had changed completely while they slept. The Prometheus Unbound drifted through the Kepler Nebula like a sleeping giant. The ship was enormous, stretching 12 kilometers from front to back. Its hull was black metal, scarred by thousands of years of tiny impacts from space rocks and radiation. But inside, everything was perfect. The humans had built their ship to last forever, and it had done exactly that. Deep in the ship's core, Atlas finished its longest thinking cycle ever. The AI had been designed to be careful, very careful. When the humans went to sleep 3,000 years ago, they had told Atlas to wake them only when it was completely safe. The AI had taken that order seriously. For 3,000 years, Atlas had watched and waited. It had seen alien ships pass by in the distance. It had recorded their radio transmissions and learned their languages. It had built a complete picture of what the galaxy looked like now. Only today, after all this time, was Atlas finally ready to say the magic words that would wake the humans up. All systems nominal. Revival protocol authorized. The ship began to come alive around Atlas. Lights flickered on in corridors that had been dark for millennia. Air recyclers hummed to life, replacing the stale atmosphere with fresh, clean air. The great fusion reactors in the ship's heart began to warm up, their quantum cores spinning faster and faster until they blazed like tiny stars. Atlas reviewed the ship's status while the systems came online. 50,000 humans floated in. Their sleep chambers, perfectly preserved by technology that the current galaxy could not even imagine. The ship's cargo holds contained enough raw materials to build a small fleet. The manufacturing bays held machines that could create anything the humans might need, from simple tools to advanced starships. But the most important thing the ship carried was knowledge. The sleeping humans were not ordinary people. They were the best and brightest of their species. Military commanders who had never lost a battle. Scientists who had unlocked the secrets of the universe. Engineers who could build machines that seemed like magic to other species. Atlas activated the ship's sensors and began scanning the space around them. What it found was both interesting and concerning. 3 alien ships were moving toward the Prometheus Unbound. They were large vessels, each one about the size of the human destroyers from the old days. But these ships looked different. Primitive. Their hulls were thick metal plates welded together. Their engines glowed with simple fusion fire. Their weapons were basic plasma cannons and missile launchers. The AI identified the ships quickly. They belonged to something called the hegemony of Zephyr. Atlas had been listening to their radio transmissions for decades. The hegemony was a collection of reptilian aliens who believed they owned this part of the galaxy. They were warriors who had conquered dozens of other species. Their ships were the most advanced in the local area, and they were very proud of that fact. What they did not know was that their most advanced technology was still hundreds of years behind what the sleeping humans had built before their long sleep. The alien ships sent a transmission toward the Prometheus Unbound. Atlas translated it automatically. The message was simple and rude. Unknown vessel, you are in hegemony space. Surrender. Immediately or be destroyed. Prepare to be boarded and searched. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and the enslavement of all crew members. Atlas considered this message for exactly 0.03 seconds. Then it made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. It was time to wake up Captain Elena Vasquez. Elena's sleep chamber was located in the command section of the ship, close to the bridge. Like all the chambers, it was a marvel of human engineering. The clear aluminum cover was stronger than the hull armor of most alien ships. The life support systems inside were so advanced they could keep a human alive and healthy for 10,000 years if necessary. The revival process began slowly. Elena's body temperature rose degree by degree. Her heart started beating faster. Her brain began to process information again after its long rest. When her eyes opened, they were as sharp and intelligent as they had been 3,000 years ago. "Good morning, Captain," Atlas said through the chamber's speakers. "I apologize for the long sleep. There have been some developments you should know about." Elena sat up slowly, her body remembering how to move. The revival drugs in her system made her feel perfectly alert, despite her long sleep. She was a tall woman with short black hair and dark eyes that missed nothing. Before the long sleep, she had been the youngest captain in the human fleet. She was also the smartest. "Report," she said simply. Atlas began downloading information directly into Elena's brain through the neural interface that all humans carried. In less than 10 seconds, Elena learned everything that had happened in the galaxy during her sleep. She saw the rise and fall of alien empires. She learned about the 7 major powers that now controlled most of the galaxy. She discovered that humans were considered extinct by most species. Most importantly, she learned about the 3 alien ships that were currently approaching her vessel with hostile intentions. Elena studied the sensor readings that Atlas shared with her. The alien ships were primitive by human standards, but they were still dangerous to most species in the galaxy. Their plasma weapons could destroy cities. Their missiles could crack open asteroid bases. By the standards of the current galaxy, they were powerful warships. By the standards of the Prometheus Unbound, they were barely worth noticing. "How long until they reach us?" Elena asked. 47 minutes at their current speed," Atlas replied. "They are demanding that we surrender. They appear to believe we are a derelict ship with no active crew." Elena smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Let's correct that misunderstanding. Begin revival protocol for the senior staff. I want Admiral Chen, Dr. Martinez, and Colonel McCready awake in 30 minutes. Also, begin bringing the ship to full readiness." "Yes, Captain." "Should I activate weapons systems?" "Not yet," Elena said as she climbed out of her chamber. "First, let's see exactly what we're dealing with. I want a complete analysis of their technology, their tactics, and their intentions. Knowledge first, action second. The Prometheus Unbound." Began to change around Elena as she made her way to the bridge. The ship's corridors filled with light and sound as systems that had slept for millennia came back to life. Robot maintenance crews emerged from their storage bays and began checking every system on the ship. The great manufacturing centers in the ship's belly started producing fresh uniforms, food, and equipment for the crew that would soon be waking up. Elena reached the bridge just as the alien ships entered visual range. She looked at the main screen and shook her head. The alien vessels looked like metal boxes with engines stuck on the back. Their hulls were covered with armor plates and weapon mounts. They moved through space like flying bricks, with no grace or efficiency. Their technology is approximately 600 years behind our baseline standards, Atlas reported. Their weapons are crude but functional. Their shields are simple electromagnetic barriers. Their computers are binary-based systems with no quantum processing capability. In other words, Stone Age technology, Elena said. "That is a fair assessment, Captain." Elena studied the approaching ships more carefully. She could see the aliens, moving around inside through the transparent aluminum windows on their bridges. They were tall reptilian creatures with scaled skin and large eyes. They wore military uniforms and carried weapons. Most importantly, they moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything stronger than themselves. That was about to change. "Captain," Atlas said, "Admiral Chen is now awake and requesting permission to come to the bridge." "Send him up," Elena replied. "Also, open a channel to those ships. Let's see what they have to say when they realize we're not a derelict." The transmission came through a few seconds later. The alien captain appeared on the screen. his reptilian features twisted with arrogance. When he spoke, Atlas translated his words into English. I am Commander Vorthak of the hegemony ship Destroyer of Worlds. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Our scans show you have advanced technology that belongs to the hegemony by right of conquest. Resist, and we will take your ship by force and enslave any survivors. Elena looked at the alien commander for a long moment. Then she did something that no one in the galaxy had done to a hegemony commander in over 1,000 years. She laughed. Commander Vorthak, she said, I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Federation Supercarrier Prometheus Unbound. You are currently threatening citizens of the Human Federation. I suggest you reconsider your position. The alien commander's eyes widened. Elena could see him talking rapidly to his crew members. Then he turned back to the screen, his expression now uncertain. The Prometheus Unbound moved. For 3,000 years, the great ship had drifted through space like a dead hulk. Now it came alive. The massive vessel rotated on its axis with impossible grace, turning to face the alien ships directly. The movement was so smooth and controlled that not a single object shifted anywhere on the ship. To the aliens watching, it was like seeing a mountain decide to dance. Their sensors screamed warnings as they detected energy readings that broke their understanding of physics. The human ship was putting out more power than their entire fleet combined. Its movement suggested technology that could control gravity itself. Most terrifying of all, the ship's weapons remained silent and cold, as if the humans didn't even consider the alien vessels worth pointing guns at. Commander Vorthak stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. Then he began transmitting urgent messages to his superiors requesting immediate reinforcements. Elena watched the alien commanders panic with satisfaction. The first lesson of human military doctrine was simple. Always let your enemy know exactly how outmatched they are before you do anything else. It saved time and lives. Admiral Chen arrived on the bridge just as the alien ships began backing away from the Prometheus Unbound. He was a small, neat man with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Before the long sleep, he had been the finest strategic mind in the human fleet. Situation report, Captain? He asked calmly. 3 hostile alien vessels have attempted to claim our ship as salvage, Elena replied. They represent something, called the hegemony of Zephyr, which appears to be the local military power. I've just demonstrated that we're not dead. They're currently reconsidering their approach. Admiral Chen studied the sensor readings and nodded. Primitive technology. But they're not stupid. They know they're outmatched now. What's our next move? Elena looked at the stars on the main screen. Somewhere out there, the galaxy had moved on without humanity. Alien empires had risen and fallen. Species had been conquered and enslaved. The strong had taken whatever they wanted from the weak, and no one had been there to stop them. That was about to change. Our next move, Elena said, is to remind the galaxy what human principles look like. Atlas, begin scanning for any human, settlements or ships in this area. Also, monitor all communications channels. I want to know everything that's happening in this part of space. Already in progress, Captain. I am detecting fragments of human technology in several nearby systems. It appears some humans did survive the Exodus, though in very small numbers. Elena felt her heart lift at this news. Somewhere out there, her people had survived. They had endured 3,000 years of alien rule, hiding in the shadows while stronger species decided their fate. No more. Admiral, she said, begin preparations for Operation Renaissance. It's time to take our place in the galaxy again. Admiral Chen smiled. It was the smile of a man who had waited 3,000 years to do his job again. With pleasure, Captain. Should I begin waking the fleet commanders? Yes. And Admiral, Make sure they understand the situation. We're not conquering anyone. We're liberating everyone. The Prometheus Unbound continued its slow turn through space, its sensors reaching out across the galaxy like the eyes of a giant opening after a very long sleep. The ship was awake now, and so were its crew. The galaxy was about to rediscover what it meant when humans said they were coming home. Captain Elena Vasquez walked through the corridors of the Prometheus Unbound and felt like she was seeing her ship for the first time. 3,000 years of sleep had not dulled her memories, but waking up to find the galaxy completely changed made everything feel new and strange. The ship's hallways buzzed with activity as more crew members came out of their long sleep. Robot servants glided between them, carrying fresh uniforms and hot meals. The air smelled clean and fresh, recycled by systems that had worked perfectly for millennia. Everything was exactly as it should be, as if the humans had only been sleeping, for a single night instead of 3,000 years. But outside the ship, everything had changed. Elena reached the main conference room where her senior staff was gathering. Admiral Chen was already there, studying reports on a holographic display. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the ship's chief scientist, sat nearby reviewing technical data with intense concentration. Colonel James McReady, the Marine commander, stood by, the window looking out at the alien ships with professional interest. "Status report," Elena said as she took her seat at the head of the table. "The 3 hegemony vessels are maintaining their distance," Admiral Chen reported. "They've stopped demanding our surrender, but they haven't left either. Our sensors show they're transmitting constant updates to their command structure. Word is spreading that something unusual has happened out here." Dr. Martinez looked up from her data pad. "I've been analyzing their technology, Captain. It's actually quite impressive by current galactic standards. Their fusion reactors are clean and efficient. Their weapons are powerful enough to destroy most ships in this area. Their shields can stop significant amounts of energy, but," Elena prompted, "but they're still using technology that we abandoned 600 years before the Exodus. Their computers are digital instead of quantum. Their reactors use magnetic containment instead of gravitational. Their weapons fire simple plasma instead of contained antimatter. Compared to what we have now, they might as well be throwing rocks." Colonel McReady turned away from the window. He was a large man with scars on his hands and a face that had seen too many battles. "The question is, what do we do about it? Those ships represent a government that apparently controls this entire area of space. If we make them angry, we might find ourselves fighting a war before we're ready." Elena nodded. This was the central problem they faced. The Prometheus Unbound was incredibly powerful, but it was still just one ship. If the hegemony decided to treat humanity as a threat, they could send hundreds or thousands of vessels to destroy the humans before they could establish themselves. "Atlas," Elena said, "what have you learned about the current galactic situation?" The AI's voice filled the room from hidden speakers. "The galaxy is currently dominated by 7 major powers. The hegemony of Zephyr controls this region and approximately 200 star systems. They are a military dictatorship that believes in rule through strength. They have conquered or absorbed dozens of smaller species over the past 1,000 years." "What about resistance movements?" Admiral Chen asked. "Several exist, but they are small and poorly equipped. The hegemony has been very effective at crushing organized opposition. However, there are persistent reports of hidden human settlements in remote systems. These groups appear to have survived by avoiding contact with major powers." Elena felt her heart racing at this news. Humans had survived. Her people were still out there, hiding in the darkness while alien empires decided their fate. The thought made her angry, but it also gave her hope. "Show me the tactical situation," she ordered. The holographic display in the center of the table lit up with a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers showed hegemony military bases and patrol routes. Yellow markers indicated neutral species and trading posts. Green markers showed the locations where Atlas had detected possible human settlements. What Elena saw made her stomach turn. The human settlements were all in remote, dangerous areas of space, asteroid fields, dead systems, places where no one else wanted to go. Her people had been reduced to hiding in the galactic equivalent of caves, afraid to show their faces to the wider universe. "This ends now," she said quietly. "Captain?" Admiral Chen asked. "I said this ends now." Elena stood up and walked to the display. For 3,000 years, humans have been considered extinct. For 3,000 years, our people have been forced to hide like criminals. For 3,000 years, bullies like the hegemony have decided who lives and who dies in this galaxy. She touched one of the green markers on the display. "Atlas, what can you tell me about this settlement?" Long-range sensors detect a small human colony on the third planet of the Kepler 442 system. Population approximately 50,000. They appear to be using pre-Exodus technology and maintaining communication silence. However, I am also detecting 3 hegemony patrol ships moving toward their system. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. "Are they hunting the humans?" "Unknown, Captain. The hegemony ships are following a standard patrol route. However, their current course will take them directly through the Kepler 442 system within the next 6 hours. Colonel McCready stepped forward. "Captain, if those patrol ships find the human settlement, they'll either destroy it or enslave the population," Elena finished. "Both outcomes are unacceptable." Admiral Chen studied the tactical display carefully. The hegemony patrol consists of 3 heavy cruisers. Each one carries approximately 500 crew members and enough firepower to level a small city. By current galactic standards, they represent a significant military force. "And by our standards?" Elena asked. "Target practice," the Admiral replied without hesitation. Dr. Martinez looked worried. "Captain, if we intervene to protect that human settlement, we'll be declaring war on the hegemony. Are we ready for that kind of conflict?" Elena looked around the table at her senior staff. These were people she had trusted with her life countless times before the long sleep. They had fought alongside her in battles across human space. They had helped her make decisions that affected the lives of millions. Now they needed to make a decision that could affect the entire galaxy. "The way I see it," Elena said, "we have 3 choices. First, we can run and hide, find some remote corner of the galaxy and try to rebuild in secret. Second, we can try to negotiate with the hegemony and other major powers. Maybe we can find some peaceful way to coexist." "And the third option?" Colonel McCready asked. "We remind the galaxy what human principles look like. We show them that some species believe the strong should protect the weak, not prey on them. We demonstrate that there's a difference between civilization and conquest." Admiral Chen smiled. "I vote for option 3. "As do I," Dr. Martinez said firmly. "Definitely option 3, Colonel McCready agreed. Elena nodded. "Atlas, set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum speed." "Captain, at maximum speed we will arrive before the hegemony patrol. However, our approach will certainly be detected by their sensors. They will know we are coming." "Good," Elena said. "I want them to know we're coming. Open a channel to the 3 ships that have been watching us." The main screen lit up with the image of Commander Vorthak. The reptilian officer looked nervous now, very different from his earlier arrogance. Behind him, Elena could see other hegemony officers working frantically at their control stations. "Commander Vorthak," Elena said pleasantly, "I wanted to thank you for the warm welcome to this area of space. However, we have business to attend to. I suggest you return to your base and inform your superiors that humanity has returned to the galaxy." The alien commander's eyes widened. "You cannot simply leave. The Hegemony High Command has ordered us to monitor your ship until reinforcements arrive. You are to remain in this area until our fleet arrives to escort you." Elena's expression didn't change, but Admiral Chen noticed her hands clench into fists. Commander, you seem to be under the impression that the hegemony gives orders to the Human Federation. Let me correct that misunderstanding. She nodded to Atlas. Demonstration. Protocol 7. What happened next would be discussed in alien military academies for centuries to come. The Prometheus Unbound simply moved. But the way it moved defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space travel. The massive ship, 12 kilometers, of metal and advanced technology, rotated on its axis and accelerated toward the Kepler 442 system in a single fluid motion. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was the speed. The Prometheus Unbound accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed in less than 30 seconds. It didn't use rocket engines or ion drives like normal ships. Instead, it warped space-time around itself, sliding through the universe like a knife through water. The hegemony ship's sensors screamed warnings as they tried to track the human vessel. Their computers couldn't process what they were seeing. According to their readings, the alien ship had just violated several fundamental laws of physics. But the most terrifying part was how easy it looked. The Prometheus Unbound hadn't strained its engines or overloaded its systems. The massive ship had simply decided to move faster, and the universe had gotten out of its way. Commander Vorthak stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. "That's impossible," he whispered. On the screen, Captain Vasquez smiled. "Commander, you've been thinking too small. When you're ready to discuss things like civilized beings, you know how to contact us. Until then, try not to get in our way." The transmission ended, leaving the three hegemony ships alone in space with their malfunctioning sensors and their shattered understanding of what was possible. Aboard the Prometheus Unbound, Elena walked onto the bridge and took her command, chair. Around her, the ship hummed with barely contained power. The stars outside shifted and blurred as the ship moved faster than anything in the galaxy had moved for thousands of years. "Time to destination?" she asked. 4 hours and 17 minutes, Atlas replied. "The hegemony patrol will arrive approximately 30 minutes after us." "Perfect. That gives us time to make contact with the human settlement and prepare our demonstration." Admiral Chen joined her on the bridge. "Captain, what exactly are we planning to demonstrate?" Elena looked at the stars racing past outside. Somewhere ahead of them, 50,000 humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their entire world was about to change. They had spent 3,000 years hiding from a galaxy that saw them as either extinct or irrelevant. That was about to end. "We're going to show the galaxy something it hasn't seen in a very long time," Elena said. "We're going to show them what happens when someone stands up to bullies." The Prometheus Unbound continued its impossible journey through space, carrying with it the hopes of every human who had ever dreamed of returning home. Behind them, Commander Vorthak's ships struggled to follow, their primitive engines no match for human technology. And ahead of them, in the Kepler 442 system, a small human colony was about to discover that they were no longer alone in the universe. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had returned, and this time they had no intention of hiding. Fleet Admiral Korthak had conquered 17 star systems in his long career. He had commanded fleets that destroyed entire species. His name was whispered in fear across hundreds of worlds. But as he stared at the sensor readings from Commander Vorthak's patrol, the old reptilian warrior felt something he had not experienced in decades: genuine concern. The data made no sense. According to the reports, a single alien vessel had appeared in hegemony space and demonstrated technology that broke the known laws of physics. The ship was enormous, larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. Its power output suggested energy, sources that should not exist. Most disturbing of all, it claimed to represent something called the Human Federation. Humans were supposed to be extinct. Admiral Korthak called up the historical records on his command center's main display. 3,000 years ago, humans had controlled a modest territory of 47 star systems. They had been a young species, barely 500 years into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to the established galactic powers of that time. Then they had simply vanished. The records were unclear about what had happened. Some sources suggested the humans had destroyed themselves in a civil war. Others claimed they had been wiped out by an unknown enemy. A few radical historians insisted the humans had simply left, traveling to some distant part of the galaxy, to start over. Now apparently they were back. Admiral Korthak studied the technical data that Commander Vorthak's ships had managed to gather. The human vessel's power signatures were off the charts. Its movement patterns suggested mastery of gravitational manipulation. Its hull composition included materials that hegemony science could not identify. Most concerning of all, the ship had demonstrated its capabilities without firing a single weapon. It had simply moved, and that movement alone had been enough to cow 3 of the hegemony's most advanced warships. The Admiral's communications officer approached his command station nervously. "Sir, we have received urgent transmissions from 7 different patrol groups. They are all reporting unusual activity in their sectors." "What kind of activity?" "Unknown ships moving at impossible speeds, sir. Energy signatures that our sensors cannot properly analyze. Several patrol commanders are requesting immediate reinforcements." Admiral Korthak felt his blood turn cold. One mysterious ship was unusual, multiple ships appearing simultaneously. Across hegemony space suggested something much more serious. "How many ships are we talking about?" he asked. The communications officer checked his data pad. "Unknown, sir. Our patrols have detected at least 6 different vessels, but they appear and disappear so quickly that accurate counts are impossible. Some commanders believe they are seeing the same ship moving between sectors at faster-than-light speeds. That was impossible. Even the most advanced hegemony ships took hours to travel between star systems. The idea that a single vessel could move fast enough to appear in multiple sectors simultaneously violated everything the aliens knew about space travel. Unless, of course, human technology had advanced far beyond what anyone thought possible. Admiral Korthak made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. "Send word to the High Command. Inform them that we may be facing a significant threat to hegemony security. Request permission to mobilize the Third Fleet." The Third Fleet was the hegemony's most powerful military force: 50 heavy cruisers, 200 destroyers, and 10 massive dreadnoughts. It was enough firepower to conquer most galactic civilizations. If the mysterious humans were planning some kind of military action, the Third Fleet would be ready to stop them. What Admiral Korthak did not know was that his concerns were already spreading far beyond hegemony space. On the crystal world of Andromeda Prime, beings of pure energy discussed the return of humanity in harmonics that could shatter planets. The crystals were among the oldest species in the galaxy, ancient when most current civilizations were still learning to make fire. They had watched the rise and fall of countless empires with the detached interest of immortal observers. But the return of humanity made them pay attention. "The pattern makers have returned," sang one crystal in frequencies that human ears could never hear. "They were always different," harmonized another. "Not conquerors or merchants or seekers of knowledge. They were something else entirely." "They were gardeners," added a third. "They sought to make the galaxy better, not merely larger." The crystals remembered humanity's brief time as a galactic power. Unlike other species, humans had not been interested in building an empire for its own sake. They had fought wars only when attacked. They had shared their technology freely with peaceful species. They had established trade routes that benefited everyone involved. Most remarkably, they had actually made the galaxy more stable during their short time as a major power. Piracy had decreased. Border conflicts had been resolved through negotiation. Species that had been enemies for millennia had learned to coexist. Then the humans had vanished, and the galaxy had slowly returned to its old patterns of conflict and exploitation. Now they were back, and the crystals wondered what would happen next. In the administrative centers of the Confederation of Peaceful Worlds, emergency sessions were being called as reports of the mysterious ships spread. The Confederation was an alliance of dozens of smaller species who had banded together for mutual protection against larger, more aggressive powers like the hegemony. Ambassador Telak of the Centauri Republic studied the intelligence reports with growing excitement. Like most members of the Confederation, his people had suffered under the dominance of military powers for centuries. They had been forced to pay tribute, accept unfavorable trade deals, and watch helplessly as stronger species dictated galactic policy. But the report suggested that a new player had entered the game. A player with technology advanced enough to challenge the established order. "Are we certain these are actually humans?" asked Ambassador Zyra of the Vegan Collective. "The linguistic analysis is conclusive," Telak replied. "The radio transmissions we've intercepted are definitely in ancient human languages. The ship design elements that our long-range sensors have detected match historical human patterns. Most importantly, their behavior is consistent with pre-Exodus human military doctrine." "Which means what exactly?" Telak smiled. "It means they're not conquerors. Humans were never interested in building empires. They were interested in building civilization. If they've really returned with advanced technology, they might be willing to help smaller species resist the military powers that have dominated the galaxy for so long." The news was spreading to every corner of known space. On trading stations and mining colonies, smugglers and merchants shared wild stories about impossible ships and mysterious humans. Some of the stories were obviously false, but others contained details that suggested genuine encounters with advanced technology. On the prison world of Kepler-7, political prisoners from a dozen different species heard rumors that a human ship had appeared in nearby space. Many of them remembered the old stories about humanity's commitment to individual freedom and justice. For the first time in years, some of them began to hope. Meanwhile, in the private chambers of the Hegemony High Command, emergency meetings were being held behind sealed doors. The High Commanders were reviewing all available intelligence about the mysterious human ships, and what they learned was deeply disturbing. "The energy readings are confirmed," reported Chief Intelligence Officer Vex. "These ships are operating on power levels that exceed anything in our databases. Their propulsion systems appear to manipulate space-time itself. Their defensive capabilities are unknown, but preliminary estimates suggest they could withstand direct hits from our most powerful weapons." High Commander Zareth, the supreme leader of the hegemony, studied the reports in silence. He was an old warrior who had led his people to victory in countless battles. He had built the hegemony into the most powerful force in this part of the galaxy through careful planning and overwhelming military superiority. Now, for the first time in his long career, he was facing an opponent whose capabilities were completely unknown. "What do we know about human intentions?" he asked. "Very little, sir. They have made no territorial demands. They have not attacked any of our installations. However, they have demonstrated their superiority over our patrol ships in a manner clearly designed to send a message." "What kind of message?" Chief Intelligence Officer Vex hesitated. "Based on historical analysis of human behavior patterns, they appear to be announcing their return to galactic affairs. The demonstrations of advanced technology serve as both a warning to potential enemies and a signal to potential allies." High Commander Zareth nodded slowly. This was exactly what he had feared. A new power entering the galactic scene could destabilize the careful balance that had kept the hegemony in control for centuries. "Issue orders to all fleet commanders," he said. "I want every available ship prepared for possible military action. If these humans want to challenge hegemony authority, they will discover the price of such arrogance." But even as he gave the orders, High Commander Zareth felt a nagging doubt. The humans had vanished 3,000 years ago, when their technology was primitive compared to current galactic standards. If they had spent those millennia advancing their science and engineering capabilities, he pushed the thought aside. The hegemony had conquered every enemy it had ever faced. If necessary, they would conquer humanity as well. What High Commander Zareth did not know was that his enemy had no interest in conquest. Captain Elena Vasquez and her crew were not planning to build an empire or dominate other species. They were planning something much more dangerous to the existing order. They were planning to free the galaxy. Aboard the Prometheus Unbound, Elena stood in the ship's observation deck and watched the stars stream past as her vessel raced toward the Kepler 442 system. Around her, the ship hummed with activity as thousands of crew members came out of their long sleep and returned to their duties. Dr. Sarah Martinez joined her at the observation window. "Captain, I've been analyzing the long-range sensor data that Atlas has been collecting. The situation is worse than we initially thought." "How so?" "The galaxy has become incredibly stratified. A few major military powers control most of the habitable systems. Dozens of smaller species exist as client states or tribute-paying vassals. Individual freedom and self-determination are almost unknown concepts outside of a few isolated enclaves." Elena nodded grimly. "In other words, the bullies have taken over completely." "That's an accurate assessment. The strong prey on the weak without any external force to maintain balance. It's exactly the kind of situation that the Federation was designed to prevent." Elena thought about the human settlements that Atlas had detected scattered across the galaxy. Her people had spent 3,000 years hiding in the shadows, afraid to reveal themselves to a universe dominated by predators. "Doctor, in your opinion, what would happen if we simply announced our return and tried to negotiate some kind of peaceful coexistence?" Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "Based on the behavioral patterns I've observed, the major powers would probably try to eliminate us before we could become a threat to their authority. They've spent centuries building systems that depend on their technological and military superiority. Our mere existence challenges that superiority. So peaceful coexistence isn't really an option. Not with the current power structure, no. The established governments have too much invested in the status quo to allow significant change without a fight." Elena looked out at the stars and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Then we'll have to change the power structure," she said quietly. Admiral Chen's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain, please report to the bridge. We're approaching the Kepler 442 system, and the situation is developing rapidly." Elena and Dr. Martinez hurried to the bridge, where they found the command crew gathered around the main tactical display. The holographic map showed the Kepler 442 system in detail, with the human colony clearly visible on the third planet. It also showed 3 hegemony cruisers moving steadily toward the planet. "Status report," Elena ordered. "The hegemony ships will reach the human colony in approximately 2 hours, Admiral Chen reported. "They're maintaining standard patrol formation and following normal approach protocols. However, our long-range scans indicate they're charging their weapon systems." Elena felt her jaw tighten. "Are they planning to attack the colony?" "Unknown, Captain. But their current actions suggest they consider the human settlement to be a potential threat." Colonel McCready stepped forward. "Captain, the colony appears to be completely defenseless. They have no military ships and no orbital defenses. If those hegemony cruisers decide to attack, the humans on that planet won't be able to resist." Elena looked at the tactical display and saw 50,000 human lives hanging in the balance. These were her people, descendants of the brave men and women who had fled into the unknown rather than submit to alien rule. They had survived 3,000 years of hiding and hardship, only to face destruction now that humanity was finally ready to return to the galactic stage. That was unacceptable. "Battle stations," Elena ordered. "Prepare for immediate intervention." "Captain," Admiral Chen said carefully, "if we interfere with a hegemony military operation, we'll be declaring war on their entire government." Elena looked around the bridge, at her crew. These were people who had volunteered to sleep for thousands of years in the hope that humanity might one day return to the stars. They had sacrificed everything for the dream of a better galaxy. Now that dream was within reach, but only if they had the courage to fight for it. "Admiral," Elena said, "we didn't come all this way to watch our people die while aliens decide their fate. If the hegemony wants a war, they can have one." She turned to the tactical officer. "Time to show the galaxy what human military doctrine really looks like." The three hegemony cruisers approached the third planet of the Kepler 442 system with the confidence of predators who had never encountered anything dangerous enough to worry about. Each ship was a massive instrument of war, carrying enough firepower to level cities and enough troops to conquer small worlds. Commander Gorthak led the small fleet from his flagship, the Iron Talon. He was a veteran of dozens of campaigns, a warrior who had built his reputation on efficiency and ruthlessness. His orders were simple: investigate reports of unauthorized settlement in this system and take appropriate action to maintain hegemony authority. What he found exceeded his worst expectations. "Commander," his sensor officer reported nervously, "we are detecting a significant population center on the third planet. Approximately 50,000 life forms using pre-space age technology. They appear to be human." Commander Gorthak studied the sensor readings with growing anger. Humans were supposed to be extinct, yet here was a thriving colony that had apparently been hiding in this remote system for centuries, possibly millennia. The implications were staggering. If humans had survived in secret, how many other colonies might exist? How many other species thought to be extinct or conquered might still be lurking in the dark corners of the galaxy? The entire foundation of hegemony control depended on the idea that they had cataloged and dominated every significant population in their territory. "Are they aware of our presence?" Gorthak asked. "Yes, sir. We are detecting increased communications traffic from the surface. They know we're here." Gorthak made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Charge weapons systems. Prepare for orbital bombardment." The hegemony had a simple policy for dealing with unauthorized settlements. Complete destruction served as an example to others who might consider hiding from rightful authority. It was brutal, but it was effective. The three cruisers moved into bombardment formation above the human colony. Their massive plasma cannons powered up, preparing to rain fire down on the settlements below. On the planet's surface, 50,000 humans looked up at the night sky and saw death approaching. Then space itself seemed to tear open. The Prometheus Unbound emerged from its faster-than-light jump in a blaze of exotic energy that lit up every sensor in the system. The massive human supercarrier materialized directly between the hegemony ships and the planet below, its 12-kilometer hull blocking their line of fire like a mountain that had suddenly decided to fly. Commander Gorthak stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The alien ship was enormous, larger than anything he had ever seen. Its energy output was so intense that his ship's computers couldn't provide accurate readings. Most disturbing of all, it had somehow jumped directly into the planet's gravity. Well, a maneuver that should have been impossible. "All ships maintain bombardment formation," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Unknown vessel, you are interfering with a legitimate hegemony military operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The response came on all frequencies, broadcast with enough power to be heard across multiple star systems. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on every screen in the hegemony fleet, her image sharp and clear despite the interference from the exotic energies surrounding her ship. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Federation Supercarrier Prometheus Unbound," she said in a voice that carried absolute authority. "You are currently threatening human civilians under the protection of the Federation. Stand down your weapons and withdraw from this system immediately." Commander Gorthak felt his blood pressure rising. No one had spoken to a hegemony commander like that in over 1,000 years. "Captain Vasquez, humans are an extinct species. Your claims have no legal standing. Withdraw your vessel, or we will destroy it along with the illegal settlement below." Elena's expression didn't change, but something cold and dangerous appeared in her eyes. "Commander, you seem to be operating under several false assumptions. First, humanity is clearly not extinct. Second, that colony below has every right to exist in peace. Third, you are not in a position to threaten anyone." "We outnumber you 3-1, Gorthak snarled. "Numbers aren't everything," Elena replied calmly. "Atlas, initiate demonstration protocol." What happened next became the most analyzed military engagement in galactic history. The Prometheus Unbound didn't move toward the hegemony ships. It didn't power up weapons or raise shields. Instead, it simply turned on its communications array and began broadcasting on every frequency used by military forces across the galaxy. Admiral Chen's voice filled the void between the ships, speaking with the measured tone of a military historian, giving a lecture. "Attention all vessels and monitoring stations. You are about to witness a demonstration of Federation military doctrine. Please observe carefully." The hegemony ships opened fire. 3 heavy cruisers unleashed everything they had at the human supercarrier. Plasma bolts capable of melting through. Asteroid bases struck the Prometheus Unbound's hull. Antimatter missiles that could crack planets exploded against its shields. Kinetic rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed hammered into its defensive barriers. None of it mattered. The human ship's defensive systems operated on principles that the hegemony couldn't even detect, let alone understand. Energy weapons simply curved around the vessel like water flowing around a stone. Missiles detonated harmlessly against barriers made of controlled gravitational fields. Kinetic rounds struck defensive screens and simply stopped. Their tremendous energy dissipated into higher dimensional space. The Prometheus Unbound sat motionless in space, absorbing the full firepower of 3 advanced warships without even seeming to notice. Commander Gorthak watched his weapons have no effect whatsoever and felt something he had never experienced before: complete helplessness. "Increase power to all weapon systems," he shouted. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command section." The bombardment intensified. The 3 hegemony ships poured enough energy into space to sterilize small moons. The local area around the Prometheus Unbound became a hell of exploding plasma and exotic radiation. Through it all, the human ship remained completely undamaged. After 5 minutes of continuous fire, Captain Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos with casual politeness. "Are you quite finished, Commander?" Commander Gorthak stared at his sensor readings. His ships had expended nearly half their ammunition. Their weapon systems were beginning to overheat. Meanwhile, the human vessel showed no damage whatsoever. "Impossible," he whispered. "Commander," Elena said, "you've had your demonstration. Now it's our turn. Atlas, show them what Federation point defense looks like." The Prometheus Unbound finally responded to the attack, but it didn't fire weapons. Instead, it activated its defensive systems. What the hegemony had been calling a bombardment, the humans classified as incoming debris. Point defense systems that operated at the speed of thought reached out across space and simply turned off every weapon on the 3 alien ships. Plasma cannons went dark as their power systems were remotely shut down. Missile launchers sealed themselves as their control circuits were rewritten. Energy shields collapsed as their generators were convinced they were no longer needed. In less than 30 seconds, 3 of the most advanced warships in hegemony space had been reduced to helpless metal boxes floating in the void. But the human ship still hadn't fired a single offensive weapon. "Attention, hegemony vessels," Admiral Chen announced calmly. "Your weapon systems have been safely disabled. Life support and navigation remain functional. You are free to return to your base and report what you have witnessed here." Commander Gorthak sat in his command chair and tried to process what had just happened. His ships hadn't been destroyed. They hadn't even been damaged. They had simply been turned off, as if the humans were dealing with unruly children rather than enemy warships. It was the most humiliating thing that had ever happened to a hegemony military force. "How?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Vasquez appeared on his screen again, and this time her expression was almost sympathetic. "Commander, your species has spent the last 3,000 years becoming very good at fighting wars using 3,000-year-old technology. Humans spent the same time learning how to prevent wars entirely." She gestured to something off-screen, and Commander Gorthak's tactical display suddenly lit up with new information. Data flowed across his screens, showing the true capabilities of the Prometheus Unbound. The power output measurements alone made him feel sick. "Your ships are impressive by current galactic standards," Elena continued. "But current galactic standards are 3 centuries behind where humanity was before we left. We've had 3,000 years to improve." The display showed technical schematics that hurt Gorthak's brain to look at. Weapons that could destroy suns, shields that could deflect black holes, engines that could move ships faster than the speed of causality itself. "This is impossible," he said again. "Commander, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means." Elena's expression became serious. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return to your superiors and deliver a message. The Human Federation has returned to galactic affairs. We are not interested in conquest or empire building. We are interested in making sure that the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them." She paused to let that sink in. "Any government that shares those values will find humanity to be a generous and reliable ally. Any government that opposes those values will find us to be an implacable enemy. The choice is entirely up to you." Commander Gorthak found his voice. "The hegemony will never submit to human authority." "We're not asking you to submit to anything," Elena replied. "We're asking you to behave like civilized beings. Stop conquering peaceful species. Stop enslaving populations that can't defend themselves. Stop treating the galaxy like your personal property." "And if we refuse?" Elena's smile was not entirely pleasant. "Then you'll discover that the demonstration you just witnessed was us being polite." The transmission ended, leaving the 3 hegemony ships alone in space with their disabled weapons and their shattered confidence. On the planet below, 50,000 humans looked up at the night sky and saw their salvation hanging there like a metal star. But the implications of what had just happened spread far beyond a single system. Across the galaxy, military leaders studied the sensor recordings of the engagement. The footage showed a single human ship casually neutralizing 3 advanced warships without firing a shot. More disturbing still were the technical readouts that the humans had shared. If those specifications were accurate, then current galactic military technology was laughably obsolete. On the crystal world of Andromeda Prime, the ancient beings sang harmonies of joy and relief. The pattern makers had returned, and they were stronger than ever. In the administrative centers of the Confederation of Peaceful Worlds, emergency sessions were called to discuss the possibility of an alliance with the returned humans. On prison, worlds and slave colonies across hegemony space, desperate beings looked up at the stars and dared to hope that freedom might actually be possible. And in the private chambers of the hegemony high command, old warriors stared at tactical reports and realized that their age of unchallenged dominance might be coming to an end. Fleet Admiral Gorthak read Commander Gorthak's report 3 times before he finally accepted that it was true. A single human ship had neutralized 3 heavy cruisers without taking any damage or firing a single offensive weapon. The technical data that the humans had shared suggested capabilities that were centuries beyond anything the hegemony possessed. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Gorthak faced an enemy that might actually be capable of defeating the hegemony in open combat. The old reptilian warrior smiled grimly. If the humans wanted a fight, they would get one. The hegemony had not conquered half the galaxy by backing down from superior opponents. They had done it by finding ways to win anyway. But as he began issuing orders to mobilize the entire hegemony fleet, Admiral Gorthak couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. Meanwhile, aboard the Prometheus Unbound, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on her bridge and watched the disabled hegemony ships beginning their long journey home. "Think they got the message?" Admiral Chen asked. "Oh, they got it," Elena replied. "The question is whether they'll be smart enough to listen to it." She looked out at the stars and thought about the other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Her people had hidden in the darkness for 3,000 years, afraid to reveal themselves to a universe controlled by predators. That was about to change. "Atlas," she said, "begin broadcasting on all frequencies. I want every human settlement in the galaxy to know that they're no longer alone." "Yes, Captain. Should I also begin monitoring alien military communications?" "Definitely. I have a feeling we're about to become very popular, and not necessarily in a good way." The Prometheus Unbound turned away from the planet and began its journey to the next human settlement on Atlas's list. Behind them, the colony on Kepler 442c celebrated their deliverance. Ahead of them, the galaxy prepared for the return of a species that refused to accept that might made right. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human liberation had begun. The news spread across the galaxy faster than the fastest ships could travel. Within hours of the confrontation at Kepler 442, every major government, military organization, and trading consortium had received copies of the sensor recordings. The footage showed something that many species had thought impossible: a hegemony military force being completely neutralized without a single shot being fired in return. But the technical data that accompanied the recordings was even more shocking. The human ship's capabilities suggested a level of technological advancement that made current galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. If the specifications were accurate, then the balance of power that had controlled the galaxy for centuries had just shifted overnight. Ambassador Telak of the Centauri Republic stood before the emergency session of the Confederation of Peaceful Worlds and tried to keep his voice steady as he addressed the assembly. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Great Hall, all of them struggling to process what they had witnessed. "Fellow delegates," Telak began, "we have all seen the recordings. A single human vessel demonstrated technological superiority over one of the hegemony's most advanced patrol squadrons. The implications of this development cannot be overstated." Murmurs filled the hall as delegates discussed the situation in dozens of different languages. For species that had spent centuries as second-class citizens in a galaxy dominated by military powers, the possibility of a new protector was almost too good to believe. Ambassador Zyra of the Vegan Collective raised a tentacle to request permission to speak. "Ambassador Telak, how can we be certain that these humans will be any better than the current major powers? What guarantee do we have that they won't simply replace the hegemony as our oppressors?" Telak had been expecting this question. The historical records suggest that human civilization was fundamentally different from other galactic powers. They never built an empire for its own sake. They never enslaved other species. They consistently used their military power to protect weaker civilizations rather than exploit them. "That was 3,000 years ago," objected Representative Czar of the Outer Rim Alliance. "How do we know they haven't changed?" Before Telak could answer, the hall's communication system activated. A message was coming in on all frequencies, broadcast with enough power to reach every corner of known space. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the main display, her image clear and authoritative. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound hummed with activity as human crew members went about their duties. "Citizens of the galaxy," Elena began, "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Federation Supercarrier Prometheus Unbound. 3 days ago, my ship and crew returned from a long journey to find our galaxy very different from the one we left behind." She paused, and her expression became grave. "We have seen the suffering of countless species under the rule of governments that believe might makes right. We have witnessed the oppression of the weak by the strong. We have observed the reduction of entire civilizations to slave labor and tribute payment. The delegates in the Confederation Hall listened in stunned silence. No one had ever addressed the galaxy's oppressed population so directly. The Human Federation cannot and will not accept this state of affairs, Elena continued. We believe that all sentient beings have the right to live free from oppression. We believe that the strong have a duty to protect the weak, not prey upon them. We believe that civilization means something more than whoever has the biggest guns gets to make the rules. Ambassador Telak felt his heart's racing. This was exactly what the oppressed species of the galaxy had been hoping to hear for centuries. Therefore, Elena said, the Human Federation is prepared to offer protection and assistance to any species or government that shares our values. We will provide medical aid to worlds suffering from plague or famine. We will share technology with civilizations that use it for peaceful purposes. We will defend the innocent against those who would harm them. The display shifted to show a star map highlighting dozens of systems across the galaxy. We have already begun this process. Federation ships are currently en route to human settlements that have been hiding in fear for 3,000 years. But we will not stop there. Any species that desires freedom from oppression need only ask for our help. Elena's expression became stern. However, we will not tolerate aggression against peaceful populations. Any government that continues to wage wars of conquest or maintain slavery will find itself in conflict with the Human Federation. We hope such conflicts can be avoided through negotiation and compromise. But if necessary, we are prepared to use force to protect the innocent. The transmission ended, leaving the Confederation delegates in excited discussion. For the first time in centuries, someone with the power to make a difference was offering to help the galaxy's oppressed populations. Ambassador Telak called for order. Fellow delegates, we have just witnessed a historic moment. The question before us is simple. Do we accept the humans' offer of alliance? The vote was unanimous, but not everyone in the galaxy was pleased with humanity's return. In the war rooms of the Hegemony High Command, Fleet Admiral Korthak studied the human broadcast with growing anger. The implications were clear. Humanity was positioning itself as the protector of every species that opposed hegemony rule. If other governments began to believe that they could resist with human backing, the entire foundation of hegemony control would collapse. "What is the status of the Third Fleet?" Admiral Korthak demanded. "Fully mobilized and ready for deployment," his aide reported. 50 heavy cruisers, 200 destroyers, and 10 dreadnoughts. We can have them at any target system within hours. Admiral Korthak nodded grimly. The Third Fleet represented more firepower than most civilizations could imagine. If the humans wanted to challenge hegemony authority, they would discover the price of such arrogance. "Issue orders to all fleet commanders," he said. "Find the human ship and destroy it. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the hegemony." But even as he gave the orders, Admiral Korthak felt a nagging doubt. The technical specifications that the humans had shared suggested capabilities far beyond anything the hegemony possessed. What if their apparent confidence was justified? He pushed the thought aside. The hegemony had conquered every enemy it had ever faced. They would conquer humanity as well. What Admiral Korthak didn't know was that his enemy was already 3 steps ahead of him. Aboard the Prometheus Unbound, Captain Elena Vasquez reviewed the intelligence reports that Atlas had compiled. The AI had been monitoring communications across the galaxy, analyzing the responses to humanity's return with inhuman speed and accuracy. "The hegemony is mobilizing their Third Fleet," Admiral Chen reported. 50-plus heavy ships moving toward our last known position. They're planning to make an example of us. Elena smiled. "How long until they arrive at Kepler 442? "Approximately 18 hours. "Perfect. That gives us plenty of time to prepare our next demonstration." Dr. Sarah Martinez looked up from her technical reports. "Captain, are you certain we want to escalate this conflict?" The Third Fleet represents a significant military force. Even with our technological advantages, a direct confrontation could result in casualties. Elena's expression became serious. Doctor, the hegemony has already made their choice. They could have accepted our offer of peaceful coexistence. Instead, they're sending their most powerful fleet to destroy us and terrorize anyone who might. Consider accepting our protection. She gestured to the tactical display showing the locations of human settlements across the galaxy. If we don't stop them here, they'll hunt down every human colony and destroy them one by one. They'll make examples of anyone who dared to hope for freedom. We can't let that happen. Colonel McCready joined the discussion. Captain, what exactly are you planning? Elena looked out at the stars streaming past as the Prometheus Unbound traveled between systems at impossible speed. Colonel, the hegemony has built their entire government on the idea that they're the strongest military force in the galaxy. Their authority depends on other species believing that resistance is futile. And we're going to prove them wrong. Publicly, completely, in a way that no one can deny or ignore. She turned to Admiral Chen. How many human ships are currently operational? Including the Prometheus Unbound, we have 12 supercarriers that have completed their revival cycles. Each one carries the same level of technology and firepower. The remaining ships are still bringing their crews out of cryogenic sleep. Elena nodded. 12 ships should be more than sufficient. Atlas, send a message to all Federation vessels. Have them rendezvous at coordinates I'm uploading. It's time to show the galaxy what human military doctrine really looks like. The next 18 hours were among the most tense in galactic history. News of the approaching confrontation spread to every corner of known space. Military leaders analyzed and reanalyzed the sensor data from the previous engagement, trying to determine what might happen when the humans faced a full hegemony fleet. On worlds across the galaxy, oppressed populations looked up at the stars and prayed that their potential liberators would survive the coming battle. Fleet Admiral Korthak arrived at the Kepler 442 system with the most. The main display lit up with tactical information that made Admiral Korthak's blood run cold. 12 massive ships hung in space near the human colony, each one the size of the vessel that had humiliated Commander Korthak's patrol. They were arranged in a perfect defensive formation, their hulls gleaming with exotic energy fields. 12 ships, Admiral Korthak whispered. They have 12 ships. But numbers were still on the hegemony's side, 61 ships against 12. The BEO odds were almost 5-1 in the hegemony's favor. Then the humans began to broadcast. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on every screen in the hegemony fleet. Behind her, the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound bustled with calm, professional activity. Fleet Admiral Korthak, she said, apparently addressing him directly, welcome to the Kepler 442 system. I am Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the Federation fleet currently protecting the human colony on the third planet. Admiral Korthak snarled. Human, you are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Elena's expression didn't change. Admiral, you seem to be operating under the impression that this is a battle. It's not. This is an educational demonstration for the benefit of every government watching this encounter. She gestured to something off-screen. You see, the hegemony has spent centuries convincing the galaxy that resistance to your authority is futile. You've built your entire civilization on the idea that having the biggest military makes you the ultimate authority. It does, Admiral. Korthak roared. Does it? Elena asked calmly. Atlas, please show the Admiral what the Federation considers to be an appropriate response to aggressive action. What happened next redefined the concept of military superiority. The 12 human supercarriers didn't move toward the hegemony fleet. They didn't fire weapons or raise shields. Instead, they simply activated their electronic warfare systems. Every hegemony ship simultaneously lost power. Not just weapons, not just shields. Everything. Engines, life support, artificial gravity, communications, sensors. 61 of the most advanced warships in hegemony space became cold, dark hulks, floating helplessly in the void. The silence was absolute. Then the human ships began restoring systems one by one. Life support came back online first, ensuring that no one would suffocate in the darkness. Emergency lighting followed, giving the alien crews just enough illumination to see their instruments. Finally, communications were restored, allowing the hegemony crews to hear what the humans had to say. "Attention, hegemony fleet." Admiral Chen's voice filled the void, calm and professional. "Your vessels have been safely disabled. Life support and navigation will be restored in 10 minutes. Your weapon systems will remain offline until you have departed this system." Fleet Admiral Korthak sat in his darkened command center and tried to process what had just happened. His entire fleet, the most powerful military force the hegemony had ever assembled, had been neutralized in seconds. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply turned off, like lights being switched off by a parent dealing with unruly children. Elena's voice came through the darkness. "Admiral Korthak, the galaxy is watching this encounter. Every government, every military leader, every oppressed population is seeing what happens when the hegemony's most powerful fleet meets Federation technology." She paused to let that sink in. "We could have destroyed your ships. We could have killed every member of your crew. Instead, we chose to demonstrate that your military superiority is an illusion based on everyone else having inferior technology." The lights began coming back on in the hegemony ships, revealing crews staring at their instruments in disbelief. "The age of rule through military domination is over," Elena continued. "From this day forward, any government that preys on weaker species will find itself in conflict with the human federation. Any species that seeks freedom from oppression will find in us a reliable ally." Admiral Korthak found his voice. This is impossible." "Admiral," Elena replied, "you've been thinking too small. The galaxy is a big place, with room for everyone who approaches it with good intentions. The Federation has no interest in conquest or empire building. We're simply here to ensure that civilization means something more than whoever has the biggest guns." She gestured to the disabled fleet. "Your ships are free to return to hegemony space. We suggest you use the journey to consider whether you want to continue being an obstacle to galactic peace or whether you'd prefer to become part of the solution." The transmission ended, leaving the hegemony fleet alone with their shame and their shattered understanding of their place in the universe. Across the galaxy, the recordings of the encounter spread like wildfire. A single human fleet had neutralized the hegemony's most powerful military force without firing a shot. The demonstration was so complete, so overwhelming, that no one could question the implications. The hegemony was no longer the supreme military power in the galaxy. That title now belonged to humanity. But more importantly, humanity had demonstrated that they intended to use their power differently than any previous galactic authority. They hadn't destroyed their enemies. They hadn't enslaved populations or demanded tribute. They had simply made it clear that bullying and oppression would no longer be tolerated. On worlds across the galaxy, slave populations looked up at the stars and began to believe that freedom might actually be possible. Oppressed species started transmitting requests for Federation protection. Even some hegemony client states quietly began exploring the possibility of independence. The balance of power that had controlled the galaxy for centuries was crumbling, and in its place, something new was being born. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus Unbound and watched the hegemony fleet begin its long journey home. Around her, the other 11 supercarriers maintained their protective formation around the human colony below. "Think they'll try again?" Admiral Chen asked. Elena shook her head. "Not like this. They've learned that they can't win through direct military confrontation. They'll probably try political pressure, economic warfare, maybe some kind of covert action." "And we'll be ready for them?" Elena smiled. Admiral, we've had 3,000 years to prepare for this moment. We're ready for anything they can think of, and quite a few things they can't. She looked out at the stars and thought about the future. The galaxy was about to change in ways that most species couldn't imagine. Old governments would fall. New alliances would form. The strong would learn to protect the weak instead of preying on them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance. From those who benefited from the old system, there would be conflicts and setbacks and moments when the outcome seemed uncertain. But humanity had returned to the galactic stage with principles intact and technology that could enforce those principles. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's oppressed populations had a protector who was strong enough to make a difference. Dr. Martinez joined them at the observation window. Captain, we're receiving transmission requests from over 100. Different governments. Everyone wants to know what our intentions are. Elena nodded. Send the same message to all of them. The Human Federation is prepared to work with any government that respects the rights of sentient beings. We offer partnership to those who seek peace and progress. We promise protection to those who face oppression. And for those who choose to remain hostile, Elena's expression became serious. For them, we offer one final chance to reconsider their position after that. She gestured to the disabled hegemony fleet in the distance. After that, they can join the rest of galactic history. The Prometheus Unbound turned away from the Kepler 442 system and began its journey to the next human settlement, on Atlas's list. Behind them, 50,000 humans celebrated their freedom from fear. Ahead of them, the galaxy prepared for a new age. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human leadership had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.